Coming up on the Lifestyle.org podcast.
Why do you think that works better than what most people do, is just saying, well, this is easiest, or this is what I...
Well, sometimes they'll say this is the easiest. That doesn't mean it's the best.
Yeah.
But, you see that in 50 and 60-year-old people. I mean, that's all it is. It's a 2-year-old tantrum in a 60-year-old. And they need to learn for their health.
Yeah. Learn new behavior.
Yeah, because you got to help the brain out.
Yeah.
We need to help the brain help us.
And the brain can't go through all the processes.
Not at once.
We're here with Dr. Arlene Taylor, brain specialist. And I want to ask you a question. As you look at the brain, and especially making decisions, a lot of people ask me, how do you take, let's say you have multiple choices. What's your brain doing, and what's the best way for you to narrow down to make the best choice?
You do come up with complex questions. That's all I can say.
You've got the good answers. So.
Well, not always. All right, making choices. Making choices is prefrontal cortex. Mm-hmm. The part of the brain that develops last, mm-hmm. which is, I think, one of the reasons people make a lot of poor choices, because the brain's not done yet, and now they spend the rest of their lives suffering for the choices they made.
Yeah. As a young person who did not have a fully developed prefrontal cortex during that time. Yeah.
Not even a good solid corpus callosum with the connections between the brains.
Yeah.
The hemispheres. Okay, so that takes us back to the two hemispheres that we started with.
Yeah.
Most people have two. Some had to have one removed because of cancer when they were very, babies or young children. And it's interesting that the other hemisphere will take over almost all the functions. It's
really?
Just phenomenal. All right. So let me tell you something that happened to me not too long ago, because that'll illustrate the problem and how parents don't understand this. I was eating lunch in a park. I was lecturing somewhere in the city, and I had a lunch. I didn't want to go to potluck. First of all, there's probably nothing I can eat at the potluck that's healthy. And I really lean toward, I'm not an introvert, but I'm an ambivert that leans right up against introversion. And so if I've just done 3 hours of presentation, I really want a break.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and not too far away, certainly within hearing distance, here comes a woman and 6 boys. And they sit down, and she says, now, what do you want to do today? She said, you remember, one of the boys said, well, it's okay being at the skateboard park, but I thought it might be more fun going to the zoo. And she said, she looked at her son and she said, well, he chose the skateboard park. So today we're at the skateboard park. So why don't you take your skateboards and you start skating, and I will put out lunch. And when it's ready, I'll call. So she gave him a couple hours skateboarding, and then she blows her whistle, and here they come, and here's this lovely lunch. So they eat their lunch, and then her son says, okay, we're done with the skateboard park, Mom. He says, we want to go to the zoo. And she said, well, this morning I gave you 2 options, the skateboard park or the zoo, and you chose the skateboard park. So another time we'll go to the zoo. Well, he started groaning and whining, and why are you so mean? It's my birthday and I want to go to the zoo. Don't you guys want to go to the zoo? And she says, okay, if we hurry up and pack up lunch, I think we've got time to go to the zoo. Yeah. And I'm going, Lord, help that woman, because she's in trouble.
Yeah, she's teaching her kids.
She's teaching her kids that when you make a decision, you don't have to follow through.
Yeah.
And there are times we make bad decisions and we need to course correct, but we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. Let's say you've got three options. You've got 2 hemispheres. Each one of them will start processing an option. Mm-hmm. And we're not exactly sure what happens in the female brain, because remember, it's the trunk.
Yeah.
But somehow they seem to be able to look at 2 things at the same time. But they don't know what to pick. And so they agonize about their decisions. Well, the stepping down solution is what I use.
Okay.
So let's say that I've got 3 options. So I look at option 1, I call it A. Option 2 is B. And I say, okay, Arlene, with everything you know about yourself and your time commitment and so on, which of these do you choose? And I think about it and I say, I choose B. Okay, fine. Now, here's B, and here's a new option, C. Of these 2 options, knowing what you know about yourself and your time commitments and morality and anything else you want to throw in, which of these are your best option? It's still B. Okay, let's go for B. And then you quit agonizing about it. Now,
So you only look at 2 at a time. Instead of looking at 3 at a time, 5 at a time, you just say, let me take 2 and decide between those and then bring in the other options.
Because if you try to do them all at once, each side will pick an option and they'll throw the rest away. And they might throw away the best option.
So you actually go through all of them and don't just wholesale get rid of a bunch of options. You
Never
just
get
always
rid
compare against another option until you decide the final option. Why do you think that works better than what most people do, is just saying, well, this is easiest, or this is what I...
Well, sometimes they'll say this is the easiest. That doesn't mean it's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so you consider all the different ramifications or benefits one by one as you're comparing with one other option.
Yeah, because you got to help the brain out.
Yeah.
We need to help the brain help us.
And the brain can't go through all the processes.
Not at once.
If you're doing multiple
And
choice.
the research is that it will tend to drop off anything over 2. And as I said, maybe one of the ones it drops off, and you may not hardly even realize that, is the problem. Now, this is where parenting comes in. Because we have to make choices in our whole life. We never can have it all.
Yeah.
Ever. So when I learned this, I raised 3 stepsons that I love to distraction. But there's 3 of them. Yeah. And now we're going to plan to do something this coming Sunday. Yeah. Okay, and there might be 6 options. If it's somebody's birthday, or, I tried to remember who had the choice last time so that we can take turns. So let's say I say to this one, okay, it's your turn today. We can go to the zoo or we can go to the skateboard. I want to go to the zoo. Okay. We can go to the zoo, or we can go to, one of those places where you've got hands-on things, electronics and stuff. We could do that. Oh, I'd rather do that than the zoo. Okay, fine. Let's go to the zoo. Or we could go, there's a new water slide park and it's pretty decent weather. You can go to the electronics show, or you can go to the water slides. Oh, let's go to the water slides. I said, okay, fine. That's what we'll do today. We go to the water slide. Of course, they learned pretty quickly that it was the water slide today. But if, their friends or they started saying, okay, we're done water sliding, let's go to the zoo. I will calmly say, today you chose to go to the water slides. Next time you can choose the zoo. But I don't want to do the water slide anymore. I said, okay, fine. You have another choice. You can go home.
Go home, yeah.
Yeah, it's water slide or go home.
Yeah.
And at first they were, it's not fair. Well, it is fair.
Yeah.
And occasionally they'd say, well, you remember when we talked about the, whatever. I think I'd like that best of all, actually. I said, okay, you're welcome to do that. That's what we'll do today. But parents give in and teach them not to carefully consider and follow through, because they know if I whine and complain and throw a tantrum, I'll get both of them.
Yeah.
Or, walked into Walmart the other day. There was this little girl, probably 4 years old, lying on the floor, literally, heels kicking the floor, screaming, yelling, I want, I want, I want. And one of the clerks came over and she said, oh, let me pick her up and get her one. I said, leave her alone.
Yeah.
Leave her alone.
Yeah.
Just watch. And so the mother came over and talked to me, and she said she does this every time. I won't buy her another doll. And if we go to the store twice, I'm not going to buy her 2 dolls. And I said, just let her be. She's letting off steam. She wants what she wants. And you have to teach her she can't have what she wants. Yeah. And then you watch her, and she'll be looking to see if anybody's looking at her, because there's no point putting out all this energy if nobody's watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eventually, she'll start calming down. And then her mother said, now what do I say? I said, you go over and pick her up by the hand and say, we're going home now. Mm-hmm. We do not keep shopping where there's lots of screaming and yelling. Yep. I mean, it seems so basic, dear Watson.
Yeah. But it's funny how many parents, under that pressure, because there's so much shame in public, your kid is the one throwing the tantrum. How many parents do give in? And the question is, okay, so what behavior do you want to reward? What behavior do you want to have to deal with every single time? I, as a parent, didn't realize how difficult it would be having a child in a Target shopping cart. They already had the toy in their hand. They really want it, but they started acting up, being cranky. Well, we had to continue shopping. I mean, we started with the toy. We should have ended with the toy, but I was a young dad, didn't get it yet. And the crying and the tantrum began. And I said, as a young, tough dad, I said, if you continue crying, you will not get the toy. If you continue this behavior, I'm going to put it back on the shelf. The behavior continued. And I couldn't believe how difficult it was for me as a dad. It was a stupid little toy.
I know.
I mean, the kid can live without the toy, but how difficult it was for me as a parent to take the toy away and put it on the shelf and say, next time we're at the store and you behave nicely, you get the toy. But this behavior doesn't doesn't deserve a toy. It was, I mean, I felt like crying. I felt like,
a horrible parent.
Yes. And it was people staring at me because the kid was crying, whatever. It was the last and only time I ever had to deal with it. But it was so painful for me to do it. But it was worth every moment.
Now, had you given in down the line again, you'd be right back at square one, only it would take longer because he got what he wanted.
Oh, and he knows in the end, if I just continue my behavior, they will, pay me what I'm saying this behavior
But,
earns.
You see that in 50 and 60-year-old people.
Yeah.
They're not kicking and screaming on the floor.
Yeah.
But they're yelling at their partner and they're doing other unconscionable behaviors to family members and children. And I mean, that's all it is. It's a 2-year-old tantrum in a 60-year-old. And they need to learn for their health.
Yeah. Learn new behavior.
Back to one thing you said about energy. If you drink water first thing in the morning, you will have more energy during the day. Mm-hmm. And because it has to have water in order to create the energy that it stores as SDP.
Yeah.
And if you smile in the morning and are cheerful, you will also have more energy for the rest of the day.
Well, I'm going to give you a call every morning then. Could you make me smile?
Well, I like to sleep till at least 7:30.
All right. I'll call you after 7:30. Now, about the choices and decisions, I think we can also help resolve a lot of marital tension. You're in the car, you're driving along. What are we going to have for dinner? Where are we going to go? What restaurant? I don't care. Where do you want to go? And probably we can also save a lot of fuel from the cars driving around and around and around. Is it also true that you found if the person asking the question will give two options What do you prefer, Italian or Chinese, or would you want Mexican food or, American food? Is that also something that helps those who are being asked the question to also, make better, quicker decisions? Or
I think so. Some of my best friends, I try to stay with them when they're down in Loma Linda, are Betsy and Rod Jabola.
Yeah.
And we like to go out and eat.
Yeah.
And almost always he will say, well, you like Mediterranean food, we could go there. You like Italian food, we could go there. And I have a choice.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier than somebody saying, well, where do you want to go? Well, there's 500 restaurants down here.
Yeah.
Where do I want to go? I mean, it's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So just helping the brain to be able to not have to make 500 decisions, but just say, which would you prefer against those things?
And if I really didn't prefer one of them or either one, I could say, well, are there any others that you like that I might like? And that rarely happens, but it's so helpful. And, it all goes back to maturity, because you have a partner who's had a bad childhood and felt never able to be in control. And as an adult, now he or she wants to be in control because I never could as a child. And then you get these stupid arguments, and it inflames the brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people, like, for example, in my home, my wife's very selfless. And so whenever I'm like, where do you want to eat? She's automatically in her mind having a conversation. Well, I bet you because his favorite food is this, he wants me to say this or whatever. And so I found that if I don't ask that question, because she really is not selfish at all, she's going to try to pick something that I would like. And so I give her choices of things that I know that she likes. And sometimes she's like, well, I thought you would want, I love Mexican food. And I thought well, no, I'm open to this tonight. Which one sounds better to you? Or is there something else that you're craving right now?
And it's so affirming in the relationship. And we have such a long way to go, because it starts so long ago. Yeah. It starts in utero. And it's really, we need to grow up. Yeah. But many of us had parents who never grew up because their parents never grew up and their grandparents never grew up. And it's not their fault. We only know what we know. Yeah. But that's why I think it's so important to talk about these things.
And I think that's why I'm so fascinated with your research and what you're doing, is you're helping us to stop these generational cycles of not understanding why is it that I have the emotions I have, the responses that I'm having, the way that I'm thinking when these things are happening. People are not able to get out of the cycle if they don't understand where is this coming from, and how can I, in some way, understand what's happening in my brain, my mind, to be able to break this cycle. So I think that's why it's so fascinating what you do, because it helps so many people understand how can I get out of this.
One of the questions I'm often asked, and I probably should have started with that, what is a brain function specialist? Are you a psychologist? No, I'm not a psychologist. Are you a psychiatrist? No, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a brain function specialist. And what that means is I chose to spend my life looking at how the brain functions. And for years I did my own research at St. Helena Hospital about which of the 4 chunks of the cerebrum is your energy advantage, which one can you use using 1 penny per second instead of $1 per second kind of thing. And it's not that I'm not interested in the other specialties, but I think how the brain functions how your brain functions is what we need to know to get healthier. Because if it's functioning in a way that's not giving us good outcomes, we can do something about that. But to do that, you have to be willing to look at who you think you are, who you've been told you are, which may have nothing to do with who you are, and what were your grandparents like, and what were your parents like, grandparents, great-grandparents, because we know that to 3 or 4 generations, you can pass down habit patterns. And it's funny. You know, the most famous story I know is this family got together for Thanksgiving, and they had a roast beef, I guess. And the mother cut 2 inches off the end of the roast beef, you know, and fit it into this little casserole. And the daughter goes, why do you cut off that 2 inches? Oh, she said, that's because my mother did it. Well, why did she do it? I don't know. Well, call her up. So she calls up Grandma and she says, Grandma, why did you cut off 2 inches off the roast beef? Because every year at Thanksgiving, my mother cuts 2 inches off the roast beef. And Grandma starts to laugh and she goes, well, because my pan didn't fit the roast beef.
And they were thinking that it makes it, more juicy or
but
better way to do it.
We do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would like people to learn they're not a victim of somebody else's habit patterns. They need to know who their brain is to the best of their ability, how it works, and enjoy being successful.
Yes.